are destroyed in eastern Afghanistan as heavy rains trigger deadly flash floods. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines.
The Philippines classified as a high-risk COVID-19 country on the travel warning list of the U.S. CDC. Congress approves proposal to move this year's Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections to first Monday of December 2023. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. accepts the resignation of Sugar Regulatory Administration officials amid sugar importation mess. Former Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi sentenced to 6 years more in jail. And China launches fresh military drills around Taiwan following a visit by 5 U.S. lawmakers.
The Philippines has been classified by the U.S. CDC as a COVID-19 high-risk country due to a steady increase in infections. Meanwhile, Octa Research says the current COVID wave is not yet over despite a downtrend in Metro Manila's growth and positivity rates. Vin Pascua reports.
The U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention has moved the Philippines to high risk in its travel warning list. On its website, the CDC placed the Philippines at level 3 or high risk. The classification applies to areas with more than 100 cases per 100,000 residents in the past 28 days. Level 3 is the highest classification in terms of risk after CDC overhauled its rating system for COVID-19 risk among travelers. CDC said level 4 is now reserved for special circumstances, including extremely high case counts or the collapse of the healthcare system. Health Officer in charge Maria Rosario Vergere said the country's daily reported infections averaged 3,993 from August 3 to 9. This was 12% more than the average of the previous week. But despite the steady increase in virus infections, the health official said the country remains at low risk for COVID-19 considering the 2-week growth rate, average daily attack rate, and hospital utilization rate. In its daily monitoring of COVID-19 infections, Octa Research said the daily positivity rate in the National Capital Region has been trending downward since the first week of August 2022. NCR's 7-day positivity rate was down 16.1% as of August 14 from 17.3% as of August 7. Octa Research followed Dr. Guido David in a tweet, said the 1-week growth rate of cases in the NCR also decreased to negative 7%. It said while virus infections might have peaked in Metro Manila, the trends would need to hold as trends were still reversible. He added that although the region remains at moderate risk for COVID-19, the wave is not over yet. Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Philippines has recorded 3 deaths from Omicron subvariants. The Department of Health says 2 of the fatalities were positive for the BA.5 subvariant, while the other one was infected by BA.4. In its latest genome sequencing, the DOH says the country has logged additional 1,011 BA.5 cases. Aside from the 2 fatalities mentioned, 907 of the patients have recovered, 53 are in self-isolation, and 49 others are under verification. Meanwhile, the DOH has recorded 19 BA.4 subvariant cases, 16 of whom have recovered. 3 are in isolation and the other 1 died. The DOH continues to investigate the exposure and travel history of the patients. The COVID-19 vaccine replacements from the COVAX facility will start arriving in the Philippines by the end of this year. Madeline Villar Moratillo reports.
The Department of Health expects COVID-19 vaccines from the COVAX facility to start arriving before the year ends. The vaccines are replacements for those that got expired or wasted due to various reasons. Health Officer in charge, Maria Rosario Vergere, says they requested the COVAX facility to deliver the vaccine replacements in December until next year, since the country still has enough for its vaccination program. She adds that the DOH is trying to avoid another wastage that might affect the country's reputation with the COVAX facility. At the Senate hearing, the Department of Health revealed that 20.6 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines has gone to waste. But the agency defended that the expired vaccines only made up 8.42% of the country's supply, which was within the 10% wastage rate allowed by the World Health Organization. Among the reasons for wastage cited by the DOH were the expiration of the vaccines, cracked vials left over or doses that were not inoculated, and changes in temperature due to natural disasters like Typhoon Odette, fire, and earthquake. Vergere also confirmed that the Health Department has allocated a budget to buy new generation COVID-19 vaccines. The health official guaranteed that before the vaccines reach the country, they will be evaluated by experts and they should apply for an emergency use authorization from the Food and Drug Administration. Madeline Villar Moratillo reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The House Committee on Suffrage and Electoral Reforms has approved a motion to postpone the 2022 Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections. Pixo Mintak has the details.
The scheduled Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections on December 5 this year will not push through. The House Committee on Suffrage and Electoral Reforms, headed by Congressman Maximo Dalog Jr., agreed to defer the conduct of barangay and SK elections to the first Monday of December 2023, while those who will win the polls will assume their posts on January 1, 2024. The committee also approved the provision to repeal the existing law mandating the conduct of elections on December 5 and included the holdover positions for the incumbent officials of barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan. During the nominal voting, 12 congressmen voted in favor of the postponement and 2 voted against it. Overall, 38 proposals for the postponement of the December 5 barangay and SK elections were submitted in this 19th Congress. Vic Somintak reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has accepted the resignation of Sugar Regulatory Administration Head Hermenegildo Serafica and Board Member Attorney Roland Beltran. Serafica and Beltran submitted their letters of resignation to Executive Secretary Victor Rodriguez on August 14. In a letter dated August 15 and released today, Executive Secretary Victor Rodriguez informed the two that President Marcos accepted their resignation effective immediately. The two officials resigned from their positions amid the controversial issuance of Sugar Order Number 4, the so-called illegal resolution authorized by the importation of 300,000 metric tons of sugar. In his resignation letter, Beltran said his approval of the Sugar Order Number 4 was conditional, subject to compliance of the provisions of laws, rules, and regulations and the internal processes of SRA. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. met with members of the Philippine Chamber of Food Manufacturers Incorporated at Malacanang. At the top of the agenda was addressing the sugars or the country's sugar shortage. In a post, the president says he wishes businesses to run smoothly and wants to ensure job security for those involved in the fast-moving consumer goods or FMGC industry. The chief executive says his administration is considering the establishment of a transparent system to increase sugar production and secure enough supply of the commodity. The PCFMI is an organization of manufacturers and distributors of food products within the country. Also present in the PCFMI meeting were Executive Secretary Victor Rodriguez, Special Assistant to the President Secretary Antonio Vladimir Jr., Presidential Management Staff Chief Maria Zenaida Angping, NEDA Director General Arsenio Balisacan, and Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Secretary Juan Ponce Enrile. The Department of Education has no plans to extend the enrollment for the school year 2022-2023. DepEd spokesman attorney Michael Poa said the deadline for the enrollment is August 22, which is also the start of the classes. Based on the latest data from DepEd, almost 21 million learners have enrolled for the school year, lower than the 28 million target learners of the department. POA POA appealed to the parents and guardians to enroll their children before the scheduled deadline.
Kunin ko na rin po itong pagkakataon na to because 28.6 po yung ating expected learners for this year. So hinihikayat pa rin po natin ang ating mga magulang na hindi pa nakakapag-enroll na mai-enroll na po kaagad ang kanilang mga anak para po huwag na nating intayin yung August 22 na deadline.
POA said the DepEd will decide if it will give an extension to late enrollees. According to Light Rail Transit Authority Administrator Attorney Hernando Cabrera, an estimated 2.2 million students are expected to benefit from its Libreng Sakay program, as LRT2, which runs from Antipolo to Recto, is situated along 80 universities, colleges, and schools. The program was recommended by Transportation Secretary Jaime Bautista to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. during the second cabinet meeting. It aims to ease the burden on Filipino families amid the rising cost of fuel and essential commodities, and is still over the raging COVID-19 pandemic. According to Cabrera, they have prepared a system to ensure the safe, smooth, and efficient implementation of the program in compliance with the directive of the DOTR. Libreng Sakay or free rides will be offered to students from primary to tertiary levels, including those who take technical vocational courses. But the program will not cover students pursuing graduate studies. Libreng Sakay is available daily from Mondays through Saturdays, except on holidays from 5 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. To avail of the ride or the free ride, students must present their original school ID or original registration form at the Passenger Assistance Office or PAO for the issuance of the free ride tickets. The free ride single journey ticket is non-transferable and valid only for 1 day. All students who will avail of the free ride shall be subjected to the usual security inspection procedure and health and safety protocols at the stations and on the trains. Cabrera added that the free ride will be offered only in the first quarter of the school year 2022-2023, in time for the gradual resumption of face-to-face classes. The department will revert to granting a 20% student discount after the program. Next on Mata ng Agila International, Myanmar court jails Aung San Suu Kyi for 6 more years on corruption charges. China stages more military drills as U.S. lawmakers visit Taiwan. And flash floods triggered by heavy rains kill 29 in eastern Afghanistan. Mata ng Agila International will be right back after this short break.
narito na naman po kami para samahan kayo sa inyong masayang tanghalian at shoppingan dito sa Shopping All the Way with...
Jojo, handa na ba ang mga shopping list nyo? Isa-isahin na natin yan. Dahil anong man ang hanap nyo, meron tayo dyan. Eat na hit? Check. Trendy fashion? Check na check. Okay na ukay? Triple check.
At may kasama din tayong hinahangaang celebrities na pagdating sa pagninegosyo, talagang inspirasyon sa business ninyo.
Kaya huwag na natin patagalin pa. Let the shopping begin!
Shopping all the way with
Jojo,
This portion is brought to you by 318 Automart, Arlex Trading and Construction Supplies.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Ousted Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi has been sentenced to 6 more years in prison on corruption charges. The military court has ruled the 77-year-old politician guilty of misusing funds from a foundation set up to promote health and education. Aung San Suu Kyi allegedly used the funds to build a home and lease government-owned land at a discounted rate. She was earlier sentenced to 11 years in prison on sedition, corruption, and other charges on trials held following the military's rise to power in 2021. She denied the accusations, describing them as absurd. The trial was held behind closed doors, and her lawyers have been ordered not to provide information about the proceedings. Kenya's President-elect Williams Ruto promises to work with the opposition moments after police force backed fighting crowds.
I want to promise the people of Kenya that I will run a transparent, open, democratic government. And I will work with the opposition to the extent that they provide oversight over my administration. There is no room, there is nothing, there is no room for vengeance, there is no room for looking back. We are looking into the future. I am acutely aware that our country is at a stage where we need all hands on deck to move it forward.
Ruto becomes the first president or the 5th president of Kenya and the first member of the Kalenjin ethnic group to be elected head of the state in 20 years. He succeeds 2 presidents from the Kikuyu community, including the outgoing Uhuru Kenyatta. China is staging fresh military drills around Taiwan in response to a new visit to the island by U.S. lawmakers. The unannounced 2-day trip by members of Congress prompted China to renew its rhetoric that it would prepare for war over Taiwan. The 5-member delegation met with Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen Monday. She thanked Washington for its support in the face of Chinese military threats. She says she wants to maintain a stable status quo across the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan's defense ministry says it detected 30 Chinese planes and 5 ships operating the sea and airspace around the island. Monday's drills follow days of huge exercises around Taiwan following House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit. A Chinese research vessel bristling with antennas and communication gear docked at Sri Lanka's Chinese-run port of Hambantota. This was despite concerns from India and the U.S. about its alleged spying activities.
与世华侨华人热烈欢迎大家来到传统友好邻邦美丽的斯里兰卡。借此机会，我想长期以来所有关心。
Port officials said the Yuan Wang 5 entered the deep sea port after securing permission to enter Sri Lankan waters on the condition it would not engage in research. It was originally due to arrive last week, but Colombo asked Beijing to defer the visit following objections by India, which shares Western concerns about Chinese activities in the region. After intense negotiations, Sri Lanka announced a U-turn, saying permission was restored to dock at the southern port and remain for 6 days for refueling and or taking in other supplies. Shipping analytics websites described the Yuan Wang 5 as a research and survey vessel, but according to Indian media, it is a dual-use spy ship. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin pointed out that the marine research activities of the ship are in line with the international law and international practice and do not affect any country's security or economic interests. He strongly warned that it should not be interfered with by third parties. However, New Delhi is suspicious of Beijing's increasing presence in the Indian Ocean and influence in Sri Lanka, seeing both as firmly within its sphere of influence. Both India and the U.S. have raised security concerns over the ship's visit to Sri Lanka, with New Delhi lodging a complaint with Colombo. In his nightly address, the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, warns the world of Russia's nuclear blackmail.
Якщо зараз світу не вистачає сили і рішучості, щоб захистити одну атомну станцію, то це означає, що світ програє. Програє терористам, поступається ядерному шантажу. А це може бути прецедент, який побачать і інші терористи.
Zelensky alleges that Russia's provocative shelling of the nuclear plant's territory continues. He says the situation at the power plant clearly indicates the need for immediate action.
Провокативні обстріли території АЕС продовжуються. Під прикриттям станції окупанти обстрілюють міста і громади поруч. Прямо на об'єктах станції російські військові ховають боєприпаси і техніку. Де-факто станція замінована.
The Zaporizhzhia plant has been occupied by Russian forces since March, and Kyiv has accused Moscow of basing hundreds of soldiers and storing arms there. Speaking at a conference or security conference, Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu says Moscow does not plan to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine.
С военной точки зрения нет необходимости применения ядерного оружия на Украине. Для достижения поставленных целей главное назначение российских ядерных вооружений – это сдерживание ядерного нападения. Его использование ограничивается чрезвычайными обстоятельствами, которые определены в российских руководящих документах, открытых для широкого ознакомления.
Shoigu is also quick to rebut media speculations about the alleged preparations of Russia to use tactical nuclear weapons or chemical weapons. He says all of these media hoaxes are lies.
Абсурдным является и утверждение о возможном применении на Украине химического оружия. Напомню, что в отличие от Соединенных Штатов Америки, такое оружие было полностью уничтожено в нашей стране еще в 2017 году. В рамках выполнения международных обязательств.
Russian President Vladimir Putin accused Washington of seeking to prolong the conflict in Ukraine and of fueling conflicts elsewhere in the world, including with a visit of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan. According to Putin, the situation in Ukraine shows that the U.S. is trying to prolong this conflict, and it acts in exactly the same way by fueling potential conflicts in Asia, Africa, and Latin America.
Известно, недавно США в очередной раз сознательно попытались подлить масло в огонь и раскачать ситуацию в Азиатско-Тихоокеанском регионе.
Putin added that the U.S. has recently made another deliberate attempt to add fuel to the fire and rock the situation in the Asian-Pacific region. The death toll from the explosion at a bustling market in the Armenian capital, Yerevan, rose to 16, according to Armenia's Emergency Situations Ministry. Sunday's blast at the Surmalu wholesale market also injured 60 people after it caused the collapse of a building. The ministry said in a statement that 16 bodies were found during the search and rescue efforts, and more than 350 rescuers are still at work, searching for 18 people still missing. The cause has not yet been established, but local news reports citing witnesses said the explosion went off at a place that stored fireworks. Local authorities have excluded the possibility that it was a terror attack, and prosecutors have already launched a probe into violations on stocking inflammable goods, breaches in fire safety standards, and the death of people due to negligence. Flash floods triggered by heavy rains killed at least 29 people and destroyed scores of homes in eastern Afghanistan. Heavy rains over the past 24 hours lashed Palawan, killing at least 20 people. 5 people also died in Kapisa and 4 died in Nangyarhar. According to Mohammed Nasib Hakani, spokesman for the Ministry of Disaster Management, crops, numerous homes and roads have been destroyed, and more than 50 people were injured in Palawan. Meanwhile, relief teams and emergency aid have been dispatched to the affected areas. Scores of Afghans die every year in torrential downpours, particularly in rural areas where poorly built homes are at risk of collapse. Since the Taliban stormed back to power in August last year, foreign-funded aid and disaster relief schemes have been dramatically reduced. Western nations are wary that any assistance could be commandeered by the Taliban and used to consolidate their grip on power. Up next, rescue efforts at Mexican coal mines suffer setback. Torrential rain and thunderstorms to end heat wave in UK. And in Shanghai, shoppers attempt to flee IKEA store due to COVID lockdown. Find out more when Matana Agila International returns.
Ngayong linggo sa Cine Throwback.
Can you please draw me a sheep? I'm gonna find you. Oh, how beautiful you are.
I'm only half awake. Forgive me, I'm still quite disheveled.
You're perfect. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly.
Ngayong linggo, alas 12 ng tanghali. Dito lang sa Net 25.
Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together. Let's dance together sa Net 25.
More bad news for the relatives of the 10 workers trapped in a northern Mexican coal mine. Rescue efforts suffered a major setback on Sunday when water levels in the mine rose to a level even higher than when the accident occurred. The news deepened the despair of relatives who are increasingly frustrated with the slow pace of the operation. Families of the workers have been at the mine waiting for a word on their fate. On Monday, Mexican authorities announced a plan to seal leaks into the mine. The plan is to drill 20 holes 60 meters deep into the mine and inject cement into them to seal the leaks. The workers have been trapped underground for more than a week. The mine flooded during excavation work when the miners hit an adjoining area full of water. Torrential rain and thunderstorms are forecast for England and Wales with warnings of sudden flooding. From the UK, Ryan Florentino reports.
Brits are being warned of flash floods, thunderstorms and lightning this week as the latest blistering heatwave comes to a spectacular end. The latest heatwave has scorched Britain, but now heavy rainfall is set to fall on dry land, leading to heavy surface runoff as the parched earth is unable to absorb the water. Forecasters warn intense thunderstorms will spark flash floods across the country. Several days of heavy rain, thunder and lightning are expected to cause further weather-related chaos this week as the emergency services turn their attention from burning wildfires to tackling the predicted flood. The Met Office has implemented a yellow severe weather warning across the UK, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Lightning and sudden dramatic downpours have already been experienced in Blackpool in the northwest and Inverness in Scotland. Motorists have been warned to expect difficult driving conditions while train and bus services are likely to be disrupted and power cuts are possible. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I am Ryan Florentino for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Papua New Guinea's re-elected Prime Minister James Marape has called for unity to keep the ethnically diverse nation moving forward. This comes after a series of election-related violence flared up across the highlands region of the Pacific Island. Hortaleza Quinola tells us more.
The Papua New Guinea Parliament re-elects Honorable James Marape unopposed in the 11th Parliament session. Angu Party, led by Prime Minister Marape, has the highest number of candidates elected. The country's 8th Prime Minister extends his gratitude to his fellow coalition members and to the people of Papua New Guinea. James Marape says they are now ready to form a new government and will prioritize the Take Back Papua New Guinea advocacy. He reiterates it is no longer time to be divided, but to leave the past faults behind. He urges the nation to work and focus on moving forward for a better future of the nation.
But I just want to encourage Papua New Guineans. It's not time for division anymore. We've told our Pangu Party led camp and retreat in Lolwata, no more blaming the past. We will work on correcting and moving forward into the future, starting based on the start that we started in 2019. We will carry on this into the future. Chief amongst our responsibility is to look at the systems of government we have and the processes we have that has carried us thus far.
Eko Hortaleza Quinola, Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega complained to the government of Argentina about the retention of a Venezuelan plane and its crew at the request of the United States.
Un sueño hecho. Tiene secuestrado ahí a 12 hermanos venezolanos, simplemente porque así lo ordenan los yanquis desde Washington y se lavan las manos diciendo...
Ortega, an ally of Venezuela, strongly urged Argentina to return the Venezuelan plane to its true owners. Ortega also alleged that Argentina, which holds the presidency of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, is betraying the principles of CELAC and is becoming an instrument of the United States. The Boeing 747 freight Emtrasur, a subsidiary of the Venezuelan state airline Conviasa, was sanctioned and detained by a U.S. court along with its crew after landing at the Ezeiza airport. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese accuses his predecessor of trashing the country's democracy after it was revealed the former leader had secretly taken on 5 ministerial posts as a political scandal expands in Canberra.
That between March 2020 and May 2021, the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, was appointed to 5 additional portfolios, in addition to his appointment as the head of Prime Minister and Cabinet.
According to reports cited by Albanese, from March 2020 until he was swept from power in May elections, Morrison made himself a minister of the Departments of Health, Finance, Home Affairs, Treasury, and Resources.
Generations and generations well into the future.
There have been revelations of an extraordinary and unprecedented trashing of our democracy by the former Morrison government. This has been government by deception, government in secret, the appointment of not a shadow ministry by the Leader of the Opposition, but a shadow government by the Prime Minister.
Well into the future.
The Prime Minister said he had asked the country's Solicitor General to advise him on whether Morrison's actions, which he called a shadow government, were legal. Morrison defended his actions were necessary during the COVID-19 pandemic, adding that they were made during a very unprecedented time. But some ministers of the former government have said they were not told that Morrison appointed himself to their portfolios, including then Finance Minister Matthias Cormann, now Secretary General of the OECD. In the wake of the shocking revelations, Karen Andrews, who was Home Affairs Minister in the Morrison government, called for the ex-PM to resign from Parliament. A bolt of lightning hit an area in Val de Ebo that caused a huge wildfire and forced the evacuation of more than 1,000 people. According to the regional government, firefighters continue to battle the fire that has burned through nearly 10,000 hectares in southeastern Spain. Officials said they had just stabilized a wildfire in the northern Aragon region when the fire broke out in Val de Ebo. Backed by 25 planes and helicopters, hundreds of firefighters were sent to stop the fire from spreading and destroying more areas. However, Regional Emergency Chief Jose Maria Angel said their firefighting efforts were complicated by strong winds in terrain that is difficult to access. So far this year, Spain has suffered 390 wildfires that have destroyed a total of 265,467 hectares, according to the latest figures from the European Forces Fire Information System. At an IKEA store in Shanghai, shoppers squeezed themselves out to escape as authorities tried to quarantine them after a customer had been in close contact with a positive COVID case. Filmed chaotic scenes circulated online as health officials attempted to lock the store in Shuhui district to begin the lockdown. Videos show the guards closing the doors at one scene, but a panicked crowd forced them open to hastily escape. Meanwhile, Shanghai Health Commission Deputy Director Zhao Dandan confirmed IKEA's lockdown, but did not say when the close contact was believed to have been at the store. Zhao also said those who were at the store and related areas must quarantine for 2 days, followed by 5 days of health monitoring. Nearly 400 close contacts of the 6-year-old boy, who is COVID asymptomatic, have been traced, while 80,000 people have been ordered to undergo PCR testing, according to Shanghai Daily. This is not the first time a business has been locked down due to China's strict zero-COVID strategy. Earlier this year, many residents have been locked down in unusual locations such as hot pot restaurants, gyms, and offices. Activists linked to the Venezuelan government proposed the exchange for U.S. prisoners of businessman Alex Saab. Saab is a close ally of President Nicolas Maduro and is on trial in the United States for money laundering. Spokesman for the Free Alex Saab movement, Roy Lopez, calls for Saab's immediate release. Lopez says Alex Saab is not only a diplomat, but is also innocent. The movement says there are a number of American detainees in Venezuela serving sentences. Some are charged for wanting to attempt against the life of the president and others for economic crimes committed against the nation. The Free Alex Saab movement mentions that the U.S. is making more efforts to free one basketball player in Russia than free the 10 U.S. citizens jailed in Venezuela for violating laws. Lawyers for WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange sued the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency and its former director, Mike Pompeo, alleging the agency recorded their conversations and copied data from their phones and computers. The attorneys, along with two journalists joining the suit, are Americans and allege that the CIA violated their U.S. constitutional protections for confidential discussions with Assange. Assange is Australian.
So we commence an action against the CIA, Mr. Pompeo, and the various entities that were engaged in these nefarious activities based on the Fourth Amendment for damages and for the return of all this information, which was improperly gathered during the visits to Mr. Assange.
The plaintiffs say the CIA worked with a security firm contracted by the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where Assange was living at the time, to spy on WikiLeaks founder, his lawyers, journalists, and others he met with. Assange is facing extradition from Britain to the U.S., where he is charged with violating the U.S. Espionage Act by publishing U.S. military and diplomatic files in 2010 related to the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. Robert Boyle, a New York attorney representing the plaintiffs in the lawsuit, says the alleged spying on Assange's attorneys means the WikiLeaks founder's right to a fair trial has now been tainted, if not destroyed.
The recording of meetings with friends, with lawyers, the copying of his attorneys and friends' digital information taints the criminal prosecution, because now the government knows the contents of those communications. And there should be sanctions, even up to dismissal of those charges or withdrawal of an extradition request in response to these blatantly unconstitutional activities.
Assange is awaiting a ruling on his appeal against a British extradition order to the United States. The charges he faces could bring a sentence of up to 175 years in prison. In Germany, gas imports have been drastically reduced, causing energy scarcity and huge energy price hikes. And as gas companies struggle to take on the rising prices, the government has decided to allocate these costs to companies and private households. From Frankfurt, Jessica Hallow reports.
Berlin still struggles to cut its reliance on Moscow, its main source of cheap gas. The country's gas importing companies have not received the amount of gas contractually agreed on, yet they are still obliged to serve their clients, especially public utilities. So they compensated for the substantial decrease in Russian gas supplies by buying more expensive gas elsewhere. And as they can no longer take on these additional costs, the government has decided to transfer gas and energy prices to consumers. This new law will take effect on October 1st, 2022. It is to last until March 24th, 2023. Trading Hub Europe, a non-profit gas network company in Germany, shared that consumers will be charged 2.419 cents per kilowatt hour. Hence, a family of 4 with a yearly consumption of 20,000 kilowatt hour would have to shoulder additional costs of approximately 575 euros. Furthermore, Trading Hub Europe states that these costs may rise after 3 months of implementation. German Federal Minister for Economic Affairs Robert Habeck sees this as the fairest possible way of distributing and bearing the additional costs. This is Jessica Kalau reporting from Frankfurt, Germany for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming up, Philippines halts licensing crypto business until year 2025. $1 billion Lord of the Rings prequel premieres at Amazon Studios HQ. And city in Texas joins the rest of the U.S. in celebrating National Farmers Week. These and more stories when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka nang mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
With a profit of $48.4 billion or 40 billion pounds for the second quarter of 2022, Saudi oil giant Aramco has broken its own record. It is a 90% year-on-year increase and marks the biggest earnings for the world's largest energy exporter since its public listing 3 years ago. According to Bloomberg, Aramco's figure also represents the biggest quarterly adjusted profits of any listed company. The oil firm announced it would keep its dividends and record profits unchanged at $18.8 billion for the third quarter. Aramco added it would keep expanding to satisfy demands since they expect it to continue to grow for the rest of the decade, despite downward economic pressures on short-term global forecasts. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas has suspended license applications for virtual asset service providers or VASPs for 3 years starting September 1. In a memorandum, the central bank said it aims to find a balance between promoting financial innovation and ensuring that risks remain in manageable levels. BSP Governor Felipe Medalla in a statement added that the central bank decided to make this step in response to recent market developments, and those companies that will have incomplete applications as of August 31, 2022 will be classified as closed. He clarified that renewal of existing licenses is possible, but subject to re-evaluation of the company. As of June 30, there were 19 VASP license holders in the country. 5 of them do not operate, and 1 organization ceased operations in January. Previously, Binance CEO Changpeng Zhao announced plans to obtain a license from the BSP to operate in the country. The Qatar World Cup countdown clock marked 100 days to go to the opening of the tournament, which will kick off a day earlier than previously planned. AFP sources confirmed that the tournament start was brought forward by a day, with the opening match between Qatar and Ecuador now scheduled for November 30 or 20, 2022. The most important thing is making sure that the Ecuadorian fans will be on time for the match, says Jaime Bayrom, chairman of Match Hospitality, the official hospitality provider for the Qatar World Cup. Manchester City and France footballer Benjamin Mendy on Wednesday began his trial for the alleged rape and assault of 7 women, which could see his playing career end in jail if convicted. Mendy, 28, arrived at Chester Crown Court in northwest England, wearing a dark blue suit and tie to face 8 counts of rape, 1 count of sexual assault, and 1 count of attempted rape relating to 7 young women. Flanked by an interpreter in the dock, the French player spoke in English to confirm his identity. He pleaded not guilty in May to 9 of the charges and not guilty on Wednesday to a subsequent rape count that had not previously been put to him in court. All the alleged offenses are said to have taken place at Mendy's home address in Prestbury, also in northwest England, between October 2018 and August last year. He is standing trial before a jury and is on bail subject to what a judge previously called a stringent conditions, including the surrender of his passport. After his arrest last August, he was initially held at Altcourse Prison in Liverpool and then a prison in Manchester before being freed on bail in January. Dubbed as the most expensive show ever made, producers of Amazon's The Lord of the Rings, The Ring of Power described its $1 billion price tag as a bargain at a lavish world premiere in Los Angeles. The highly anticipated TV series launching September 2 on Amazon's streaming platform is said to be a personal obsession of Jeff Bezos, multi-billionaire founder of the online shopping giant turned streamer. Bezos joined the show's stars and filmmakers for the launch event at California's Culver Studios, where the first 2 episodes were screened before a spectacular light show featuring dozens of illuminated drones. The Rings of Power is set 4,000 years before the film trilogy and original books, in a fictional Second Age, a historical period sketched out in less detail by Tolkien's writings. The show features a large ensemble cast of actors who are not widely known to global audiences.
But it's an epic adventure story with universal themes and, a real labour of love. We've all worked very, very hard on it, and I just hope people enjoy it.
According to Amayo, it is mind-blowing and incredible to have sets where they built a city with a dock and ships floating. For his part, the director of several episodes of the Lord of the Rings prequel, Juan Antonio Bayona, said he's glad that somehow Amazon had the ambition to give them the resources to tell the story the right way. The Oscars has apologized to Sachin Littlefeather, a Native American woman booed off stage nearly 50 years ago. The actress appeared on live TV in 1973 to refuse an Oscar on behalf of Marlon Brando, who won it for the Godfather film. Brando rejected the Best Actor award because of the misinterpretation of Native Americans by the U.S. film industry and sent Littlefeather in his place. Though the actor had written a longer speech, Littlefeather was instructed by the award ceremony's production team to keep the rejection to 60 seconds. The actress was also jeered and shunned by the entertainment industry. The abuse you endured was unwarranted and unjustified. David Rubin, former president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, wrote in a formal letter to Littlefeather. The actress responded with levity, saying, regarding the Academy's apology to me, we Indians are very patient people, and it's only been 50 years. Academy Museum Director and President Jacqueline Stewart visited the actress at home, where she read the letter aloud. Littlefeather was also presented with a framed copy of the apology and was invited to an upcoming event at the museum. The city of Corpus Christi in Texas joins the rest of the U.S. in celebrating National Farmers Week. Today, Jane Kathleen Gregorio takes us on a tour of Grow Local Farmers Market, which connects the community with local growers and sellers in South Texas. Take a look.
It's National Farmers Market Week, and in honor of this event, today we are visiting a local farmers market here in Corpus Christi, Texas, where we will explore the fresh, products produced by local farmers and local businesses. Let's go check it out. Did you know that farmers markets help to stimulate local economies? According to a report by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in 2020, over $1.7 billion of direct-to-consumer sales were due to farmers markets and on-farm stores.
The farmers market has been going on for the last 10 years. The Grow Local South Texas, the nonprofit, has been in existence for the last 9 years. This is a way to provide nutritionally dense food to our community.
We are a Gulf Grove farm, so we have some vegan zucchini brand. We also have slices, pickle slices. We also have a fermented hot sauce, so we take fresh peppers and ferment them and make a hot sauce out of them.
We have our kettle corn. We use GMO popcorn, sea salt, organic sugar, and soybean oil, so it's all natural. And we try to stay the healthy part of the popcorn game.
So it's great to be able to just have conversations and introduce people to the specialty coffee world here at the farmers market.
My mother, Betsy Marin, runs the business. She makes 7 flavors of brittle. She does fudge, praline, sugared pecans, and we have many flavors, and we have samples of everything if you want to try anything.
My experience in the farmers market was amazing. There's so many things to try. There's jams and jellies. There's tons of clothes. And there's tons of organic foods.
We're here every week, and we don't stop year-round, rain, snow, extreme heat. We're always here.
Jane Kathleen Gregorio, Mata ng Agila International, Corpus Christi, Texas. Trusted, connected, on point.
Norwegian climber Christine Harila has just 3 mountains left in her bid to climb the world's 14 super peaks in record time after successfully summiting Pakistan's Gasher Brum 1. Nepali Nirmal Purja holds the record for climbing the world's 8,000-meter-plus mountains in 6 months and 6 days. Harila now has until early November to complete her quest and beat his time.
I think that's just like people believe that men are more strong, but I think in the reality the women are just as strong as the men are in the mountain, and there is no difference between us. Yeah, I have to go. I don't know.
Yeah,
the thing I told.
Yes, it's right.
Harila's latest successful summit was reported on her official social media pages and confirmed by Karar Hadri, secretary of Pakistan's Alpine Club. The second phase in Pakistan was very challenging and dangerous, ever-changing weather conditions, being hit by a rock illness, and a very tight schedule, read a message on Harila's Instagram page. But here we are with only 3 peaks left, she concluded. The 3 remaining mountains for Harila are Cho Oyu, Manaslu, and Shishapangma. In Belgium, spectators lined the banks of the Meuse River to watch a 40-year tradition. Since 1982, the country has held a Dinant bathtub regatta every August 15th. Participants sail down the Meuse River in specially built boats. There is only one rule: a bathtub must touch the water. The race takes place over a course of 1.2 kilometers. Organizers say 15,000 people attended the regatta this year. Revel in history as we take a look back on what happened on this day. In 1956, the Rizal Act took effect. Also known as Batas Rizal, the Rizal Act requires private and public schools, colleges, and universities to include a course on Rizal's life, works, and writing in their curricula. Its primary aim is to rekindle the flame of nationalism in the hearts of Filipinos, particularly the youth. In 1977, Elvis Presley died at 42 in Memphis, Tennessee. Doctors said he died of a heart attack, likely brought on by drug addiction. The king of rock and roll was buried on the grounds of his Graceland estate, which has been turned into a highly successful tourist attraction. And in 2018, the world's first floating dairy farm opened in the port of Rotterdam, the Netherlands. The offshore facility hopes to reduce the distance food travels before it reaches consumers to reduce transport pollution. The high-tech farm employs only 2 farmers and makes use of 3 types of robots, one for milking, one for feeding, and one that functions as a pooper-scooper. Ending this day's newscast is a quote from leadership expert John Maxwell. Power really is a test of character. In the hands of a person of integrity, it is of tremendous benefit. In the hands of a tyrant, it causes terrible destruction. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I'm Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Ang susunod na programa ay rated PG.